Story 1, The Thing That Hunted Ryan. Utah, 2021. Ethan Caldwell had flown rescue helicopters for 18 years, long enough to know that when the mountains went silent, something was wrong. It was 2:17 a.m. when the call came in. Ryan Harper, 34, reported missing on Hayden Peak. Last known GPS ping, 5:41 p.m. No movement since. Temperatures dropping to single digits. Winds rising. The dispatcher's voice held an edge Ethan rarely heard. We've scanned 10 miles with thermal. Nothing. Not even wildlife. Nothing in the Rockies meant something else was out there. Ethan threw on his flight jacket, grabbed his helmet, and stepped into the icy wind that cut straight through his bones. On the pad, Marcus Mako Torres was already prepping the hoist. Mako wasn't rattled easily, former pararescue, dozens of high-risk extractions, a man who laughed during lightning storms. But tonight, he looked tense. No heat signature at all? Mako asked. Not a damn thing, Ethan said. Let's move. The search. The helicopter roared into the darkness, blades cutting through sleet. Hayden Peak rose ahead like a jagged black tooth against the stars. Below, the pine forest swayed in the wind, restless, animated, almost writhing. Mako scanned with the floor camera. You're not gonna like this. Talk to me. I'm seeing. I don't know. Trails? Drag marks? They're long. How long? Mako swallowed. Over 10 miles. Ethan frowned. From Hayden? From Hayden straight toward Wilson's Peak. And they're fresh. Fresh meant whatever made them was still out here. But the shapes were wrong, no footprints, no paws, no sign of a two-legged or four-legged creature. Just two parallel grooves cut deep into the snow, like something heavy had been pulled or had slithered across the mountains. Ryan couldn't have made that, Ethan muttered. He's an IT guy, not a Navy SEAL. Then what dragged him? They flew lower. The mountains below were carved by moonlight, white ridges, black chasms, and the sound of wind screaming through narrow passes. Hours passed. Nothing. Then the radio crackled. Mako leaned toward the monitor. Hold up. I've got something. The peak. On the eastern face of Wilson's Peak, 19 miles from Ryan's last location, something flickered on Fleur, a tiny ember of heat clinging to a ledge barely wide enough for a pair of boots. Bring us down to 40 feet. Mako shouted. Ethan hesitated. Winds were gusting 45 knots, the helicopter shook like a leaf in a storm. One wrong move and they'd slam into the cliff. But they had no choice. Ethan maneuvered the chopper into place, rotors screaming against the wind. The ledge came into view. Ryan Harper sat curled against the cliff wall, shirtless, shivering uncontrollably. Frost clung to his eyelashes. His pupils were blown wide, almost completely white. His nails were torn down to the skin, as if he'd climbed the rock with his bare hands. Mako grabbed the harness. Dropping in. He descended through the blizzard, boots skidding onto the ledge. Ryan's head jerked up. He stared at Mako, not like a drowning man seeing salvation, but like prey seeing a hunter. Ryan, I'm Marcus, he said calmly. We're here to get you home. Ryan's lips cracked as he whispered, No, it's still here. Mako froze. What is? Ryan's voice rose to a shrill, animal panic. Don't let it see you. He lurched toward the edge as if trying to fling himself into the abyss. Mako reacted fast, too fast for a man in freezing wind. He locked Ryan's arms, but the hiker fought like a wild animal, screaming, kicking, trying to break free. Ryan! Stop! You're safe. It's under US. It's climbing. Don't look down. Ryan thrashed so violently Mako had to make a choice. He drove a swift punch into Ryan's jaw. The screaming stopped instantly. Ryan sagged into unconsciousness. Hoist us up. Mako shouted. Ethan pulled them toward the open door as snow whipped inside like knives. They strapped Ryan in, his teeth chattering uncontrollably. Ethan looked at Mako. What the hell did he mean it's climbing? Mako didn't answer. He just stared through the open door, down into the white void below them. The flight. At 500 feet altitude, Ryan came to, with a violent gasp. His eyes darted around the cabin. It walks on two legs, he whispered. But it's not a person. Ethan and Mako exchanged a look. Ryan, Ethan said carefully, did someone chase you? Not someone. His voice broke. Something. It was hunting me. It didn't get tired. Didn't slow down. Didn't make a sound. Just followed. Always the same distance behind me. Every time I looked over my shoulder, it was closer. Mako leaned in. Why didn't Thermal pick it up? Ryan stared at him with hollow terror. Because it's cold. It's so cold it kills the heat around it. Ethan felt something icy coil down his spine. And the drag marks? He asked. I wasn't dragged, Ryan whispered. I ran. I climbed. I don't remember all of it. Just fear. Pure fear. Like my body knew how to escape even when I didn't. I think it wanted me to run. I think it enjoyed watching. Mako swallowed. Then what made the track in the snow? Ryan slowly lifted his trembling hand and pointed out the window into the blackness. It did. It moved beside me, just off the trail. It never touched the snow. It just glided. Like smoke. Like a shadow with weight. He began shaking violently again. I heard it breathing. Right behind me. Sometimes above me. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. Why climb Wilson's Peak? He asked. Why that far? Ryan's voice cracked. I didn't climb it. I woke up there. That made both men freeze. You're saying you blacked out? Mako asked. Ryan nodded weakly. Yes. But every time I came to, I was higher. Farther. Fast. Too fast. He swallowed. I think it carried me. The cabin went silent. Back at the base. 2 hours later, they touched down at Heber City. Medical teams rushed Ryan inside. Ethan signed paperwork, debriefed, answered repeated questions, but his mind kept returning to the same detail. Why had thermal imaging shown nothing? And why had the drag marks looked like something moving below the snow? At dawn, investigators returned to the extraction site. What they found made no sense. No human footprints. No animal tracks. No signs of climbing gear. Just a single trail of deep, parallel grooves stretching 10 miles across impossible terrain. And near the ledge, a long, vertical gouge carved into the rock, as if something had dragged its claws upward. Ryan recovered physically, but mentally, he never returned. He stopped speaking to doctors. Stopped responding to family. Stopped eating unless someone reminded him. He sat for hours, staring at windows, flinching whenever the wind blew. The only words he ever repeated were whispered at night, barely audible. It's still looking for a way up. Sometimes he said it to the window. Sometimes to the door. Sometimes to the ceiling. And once, only once, to Ethan, when the pilot visited him 6 months later. Ryan leaned forward, eyes wide, breath shaky. It followed the helicopter, he murmured. I saw it climbing the air. Ethan left the room without speaking. He never flew another night rescue again. Story 2, The Proposal. Colorado, 2019. Lauren Brooks always thought fear had a sound, something sharp, metallic, like the ringing in your ears after a sudden shock. But on that bright October morning in Golden Gate Canyon, fear was silent. Hidden. Buried under blue skies and sunshine. Caleb Whitaker held her hand as they hiked. He wasn't the outdoors type, he hated dirt, hated bugs, hated being more than 10 minutes from a craft cocktail bar. So when he suggested a scenic mountain hike, she immediately suspected something was up. 2 years together, a stable routine, no major fights. Lauren liked where they were. Caleb seemed to like it too. Maybe today was the day. The ring, she thought. He's going to propose. The thought made her smile as they followed the narrow ridge trail, pine needles crunching beneath their boots. Almost there, Caleb said, throwing her a charming grin. The view is unreal. It was. The trail opened onto a stone outcrop that jutted into open space. One misstep would send you tumbling 100 feet into jagged boulders. Lauren had never seen this spot before, even though she'd hiked these mountains since college. Caleb stepped ahead of her onto the ledge. That's when she realized they were completely alone. The confession. He turned to her, eyes soft, posture relaxed. Yes, this was it. He reached into his jacket. Her heart fluttered. But instead of a ring box, he pulled out nothing at all. Just let his hand fall by his side. Before you say yes, he said, I need you to know who I really am. Lauren blinked. Caleb, what are you talking about? He inhaled deeply, as if preparing to take a dive into icy water. A long time ago, I did something. His voice was steady, almost rehearsed. 11 years ago. I was in Arizona, with some friends, at a warehouse rave. Her stomach tightened. Caleb, you're scaring me. He ignored the interruption. There was a girl. Her name was Emily Rowe. 19. She took something one of the guys gave her. I didn't know it was laced. When she started freaking out, she said she'd call the cops. He paused, watching Lauren with an unreadable expression. She grabbed my arm, screamed at me. I panicked. Lauren stepped back. The cliff was 3 steps behind her. Caleb's voice softened. I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't. But I put my hands around her throat. Just to calm her down. Just to stop her from drawing attention. But she wouldn't stop screaming. He stared at her with calm, blue eyes. And then she stopped. Lauren's blood iced. You killed her, she whispered. Yes. No hesitation. I was 20. Stupid. Scared. My buddy had a shovel in the trunk. We buried her deep in the forest near Flagstaff. No one ever found her. He smiled faintly. I've changed since then. I really have. She couldn't breathe. Why? Why are you telling me this? Caleb stepped toward her, gentle as ever. Because I love you. Because I want to spend my life with you. And I can't do that if part of me is buried out in the desert. Caleb, she whispered, we need to go to the police. He sighed, the kind of disappointed sigh he used when a restaurant forgot his drink order. Lauren. No. That's not what this is. He stepped closer again. She stepped back until her heel touched the edge of the outcrop. Caleb. He took her hand. Baby. Listen. If you can accept me, if you can love all of me, we'll be perfect together. She stared at him, horrified. And if I can't, she asked. His answer was a soft, apologetic smile. Then I can't let you walk down the mountain. The wind howled through the trees below. The descent. Lauren's brain clicked into survival mode. Crying wouldn't help. Screaming wouldn't help. She was miles from the trailhead. No cell service. No hikers. Just her boyfriend, her charming, gentle, meticulous boyfriend, who had murdered a girl and buried the evidence. And who now saw her as a loose end. She forced herself to smile. Caleb. I love you. I do. I'm just shocked. You should have told me sooner. Caleb's expression flooded with relief. I knew you'd understand. He hugged her, warm, comforting, familiar. She hugged him back, hiding the tremor in her hands. And she kissed him. He kissed her like nothing was wrong. For the next 4 hours, as they hiked down the mountain, Lauren matched his pace, held his hand, laughed at his jokes. She played the role he needed her to play. Inside, her mind raced. Every turn on the switchback put her momentarily ahead of him. Every narrow section put her within shoving distance of the cliff. Every deadfall log became a potential murder weapon, either by him or by her. But she didn't run. If she ran, he'd tackle her. If she screamed, he'd silence her. So she walked. They reached the parking lot. He kissed her forehead and helped her into the passenger seat as if the day had been perfect. As if he hadn't confessed to killing a teenager. As if he wasn't ready to kill again. He drove her home. Parked outside her townhouse. Smiled his movie star smile. "Think about what I said," he whispered. "About spending our lives together." "I meant it." Lauren smiled back. Then shut the door. Inside, she collapsed the moment the lock clicked. She didn't cry. She didn't breathe. She crawled to her phone like a wounded animal and dialed 911. "Ma'am, what's the emergency?" I know who killed Emily Rowe." The disappearance. Police searched Caleb's apartment that night. It was empty. Not empty like someone preparing to move. Empty like he'd never lived there at all. Closets cleared. Cabinets wiped down. Bed stripped. No clothes, no toiletries, no electronics. The refrigerator unplugged. Trash can spotless. He had vanished. On the kitchen counter sat a single object, a diamond ring in a velvet box. Next to it, a note in looping, elegant handwriting. "See you at the altar, darling." Caleb Whitaker was officially declared a fugitive. The case reopened. Emily Rowe's remains were found 3 months later where Lauren said they would be. But Caleb was gone. No credit card activity. No car found. No sightings. No digital footprint. The man simply erased himself. Aftermath. Lauren moved to Oregon under a new name. She changed her hair. She stopped using social media. She avoided windows at night. But some nights, always around midnight, she swore she heard footsteps outside her apartment. Slow, measured. Stopping right at her door. She would freeze, breath held, heart hammering. Then, just as quietly as they came, the footsteps would fade. Maybe they were just the neighbors. Maybe it was her nerves. Maybe. But once, only once, she found something taped to her door. A scrap of paper, folded twice. Inside was a single handwritten message. "Did you think I'd stop looking?" She burned the note in her bathroom sink, but the ashes stayed with her. Because Caleb's last words on the mountain still echoed in the back of her mind. "If I can't have you, I can't let you walk away." Story 3, Carson Mining Massacre. Colorado, 1893, recounted in 1977. Shane Doyle had never believed in ghosts, curses, or anything except guitar strings and stage lights. But when his band rolled into Lake City during their 1977 Colorado tour, the promoter insisted they meet an old local named Silas McAllister. Something about history you kids should know before playing up in these mountains. Shane expected a quirky old-timer with tall tales and moonshine. He wasn't expecting Silas. Silas McAllister looked carved from the mountains themselves, bent, weather-beaten, with hands like cracked stone. His voice rasped like wind through dead pines. He met them at the diner, stared at each long-haired musician with slow, assessing eyes, then jerked his head toward the door. "Come on. Sun's burning daylight. Where are we going?" Shane asked. "Carson," Silas said. The name meant nothing to Shane then. It would haunt him for the rest of his life. The ascent. They piled into Silas's rusted Ford pickup and headed up a winding dirt road toward the high peaks. The forest thinned. Wind strengthened. Snow, still lingering in late spring, glittered along the ridges. "Saw you boys on the poster," Silas said. "Rock band from Boston, huh?" "Yeah," Shane said. "We're playing Lake City tonight." Silas nodded slowly. "Good. Gives me enough time." "For what?" another band member asked. Silas didn't answer. The truck climbed past tree line. The world became stone, sky, and ghostly silence. At 12,000 feet, they reached the ruins, what remained of Carson mining town. Shane stepped out into the thin air, boots crunching on frost. Carson wasn't a ghost town. It was a corpse. Collapsed shacks leaned into each other like drunk skeletons. Mining carts rusted into frozen earth. The entrance to the abandoned mine, Tunnel 9, was sealed with blackened rock, as though it had been blown apart from the inside. "Jesus," Shane murmured. "What happened here?" Silas exhaled, frost trailing from his lips. "October 17, 1893 happened," he said. "The day 300 miners went insane in 4 hours." The wind moaned through the half-buried timbers. Silas began to tell the story. 1893. Back then, Carson was booming, over 400 residents, one of the largest silver operations in the Rockies. Tough men. Hard workers. Used to cave-ins, gas pockets, and the occasional dead canary. But nothing, Silas said, prepared them for the Black Breath. Shane frowned. "Black, what?" Silas pointed to the blown entrance of Tunnel 9. "It started down there. A gas leak, they thought. Some dark vapor rising out of the rock. Thick as tar. But when the foreman tried to evacuate the crew, something changed." He hesitated, jaw tightening. "My great-great-uncle was one of the first to go mad. The mines grew colder around them as if the story itself drained the warmth from the air. One man started laughing," Silas continued. "Not drunk laughing. Not nervous laughing. A terrifying, belly-deep cackle. And then he swung his pickaxe into his partner's face. Another miner slit his own throat with a rusted saw blade, still smiling. Others tore at their own flesh, at each other. Men who never raised their voices suddenly howled with joy as they hacked at friends and family. When the townsfolk rushed in to help," Silas said, "they found a massacre." Shane listened in stunned silence. Arms, legs, faces, ripped apart. One boy, 12 years old, killed his mother with her own kitchen axe. People ran screaming through the streets, cutting down anyone they saw. Silas's eyes darkened. And all of them, laughing. The band members shifted uneasily. "So what did they do?" Shane asked. "They did the only thing they could." Silas pointed at the collapsed tunnel. "They blew Tunnel 9 to hell." The townsfolk, those not already dead, loaded 800 pounds of dynamite into the mine shaft and collapsed the entire structure. The explosion shook the mountains, sending dust and bone fragments raining for miles. "They buried more than 200 men alive," Silas said. "Some were still screaming. Some were still giggling." Shane swallowed. "Hard. You mean they trapped them? Knowing they were still alive?" Silas nodded. "To keep whatever was in that gas from getting out." A cold breeze cut across the ruins, scattering dust through the empty streets. Back to 1977. "And that's that?" Shane asked. "It never happened again?" Silas's expression tightened. "You think people didn't try to reopen the mine?" Company men came in 1901. They drilled 20 feet before one of them killed his partner with a wrench. Laughing the whole time. He pointed toward a small ridge beyond the town. "Come with me." Against every instinct screaming to leave, the band followed him across the rocks to a narrow split in the cliff, a natural fissure maybe 4 feet wide. Inside lay bones. Not arranged. Not buried. Scattered. Pale white under the thin sun. Some were small. Too small. A few still had fragments of clothing clinging to them, preserved by the dry mountain air. That's what made me stop taking people up here, Silas said. Bones started showing up in this crack about 15 years ago. People who wandered too close to Tunnel 9 claimed they heard tapping. Scratching. Like someone working a pickaxe slowly, patiently. He leaned in close to the darkness inside the fissure. You hear that? Shane held his breath. Tap. 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 Faint. Metallic. Where no metal should be. Where no living miner had worked for 84 years. Shane stepped back fast. Probably rock shifting, he said, voice cracking. Silas shook his head. I've lived here all my life. Rocks don't tap in rhythm. He stood straight and looked Shane dead in the eyes. And they sure as hell don't laugh. A low, almost imperceptible sound drifted from deep within the crack. Not a voice. Not exactly. But unmistakably, laughter. Dry. Raspy. Childlike. Tiny echoes bouncing through unseen tunnels. One of the band members cursed and stumbled back, nearly falling on the rocks. Silas turned to them, unwavering. Whatever escaped when the mine blew, it crawled up here. Dragged itself out of the earth. Those bones are the ones it fed on while it healed. He paused. And it's still down there. Still tapping. Still waiting. Shane felt the cold seep into his marrow. Why bring us here? He asked quietly. Silas stared at him with haunted eyes. Because tonight, before you go on that stage, people need to understand where they're living. What's under their feet. What this town forced into the dark. He looked back toward the crack. And what wants to come out. The descent. On the drive down, no one spoke. The truck rattled, the wind howled, and the mountains loomed like silent witnesses. As they reached the outskirts of Lake City, Silas finally broke the silence. One last thing, he said. Those bones in the fissure? Shane braced himself. What about them? Silas shifted into park and faced him. They were fresh. Shane blinked. Fresh as in modern? As in less than 30 years old, Silas said. And not a single missing person report matches those remains. The old man nodded toward the mountains. Something's still taking people. Shane never forgot the sound he heard up there, the slow, steady, metallic tapping that didn't belong to wind or water or shifting stone. Some nights on tour, while tuning his guitar backstage, he'd swear he heard that same faint rhythm in the pipes or ventilation ducts. Tap. 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 Always in threes. Always patient. Always laughing beneath the surface. Story 4, The Shadow That Stood Behind Me. I first noticed the shadow the night the power went out. I was alone in my apartment, just the soft hum of my computer, the cold streetlight leaking through the blinds, and the distant sound of rain tapping the balcony railing. I was editing footage from a documentary assignment, abandoned hospitals, dark corridors, places that still smelled like disinfectant and regret. Nothing supernatural. Nothing unusual. At least, that's what I believed. Around 1:17 a.m., the lights flickered violently, as if someone was shaking the whole building. Then, total blackout. My monitor died with a soft click, leaving me in a room so dark I could hear my own heartbeat. I reached for my phone, fumbling, its screen briefly lighting up the space with a cold, blue glow. And that's when I saw it. A tall, wrong-shaped silhouette standing directly behind me. Not reflected. Not a trick of the light. Not part of the furniture. Something else. It towered over me, too long, too thin, its shoulders rising almost to the ceiling, its head bent at an unnatural angle as if observing me with a curiosity that wasn't human. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The shadow didn't move either. It simply waited, like it had been waiting for years, and this was the moment it had finally chosen to be seen. Then the lights came back. The room snapped into brightness. And the shadow was gone, leaving only the faint smell of damp earth and an icy pressure on the back of my neck, like fingers retreating. At first, I convinced myself it was a hallucination. Exhaustion. Sleep deprivation. Too many hours staring at dark hallways on footage. I tried to laugh it off. But the next night, it came back. Not behind me this time. This time, it stood closer. I woke at 3:29 a.m. to the sound of fabric dragging lightly on the floor, as if something tall and heavy brushed the walls while moving. I opened my eyes, and there, in the corner of my bedroom, was the silhouette again. Taller than the wardrobe. Still bent. Still wrong. A pitch black cutout against the dim room. Except it wasn't flat this time. I could see depth. Wait. A faint ripple, like something shifting its stance. The shadow leaned forward. The floor creaked. And then, in a voice like dry leaves being crushed underfoot, it whispered directly into my ear, though it was still across the room. "You finally see me." I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from my balcony door to my bedroom. Long, narrow footprints. Human-shaped, but not human-sized. And on my mirror, written in streaks of condensation, despite the room being cold, was a single sentence. "Let me stand behind you again." I called in sick to work the next day, not because I was sick, but because I couldn't risk falling asleep on the bus and waking up with that thing hovering over me again. I spent the morning cleaning the apartment, telling myself the footprints were something I tracked in during the rain, that the writing on the mirror could have been a prank, that the whisper was just sleep paralysis. But the truth sat in my stomach like a stone. No one else had a key. No one else had been inside. And I hadn't opened the balcony door in weeks. By noon, exhaustion finally pinned me to the couch. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I don't even remember closing my eyes. All I remember is jerking awake to the sensation of weight around me, like two massive hands pressing on either side of the couch, boxing me in. I opened my eyes. It was inches from my face. The shadow leaned over me, its form now more defined than ever before, long folds in its body, not exactly clothes but something draping like burnt fabric, limbs that ended in sharp, tapering fingers, a head that flickered at the edges as if reality struggled to hold its shape. Its face, if it had one, was just a deeper void within the void. It didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. It simply watched me wake. Fight or flight should have kicked in, but all I felt was a numb, suffocating stillness, as if the creature dampened my ability to react. My body refused to obey. Finally, the shadow shifted, leaning even closer. I could feel its presence like a slab of cold stone lowering over me. It whispered, "You shouldn't ignore someone who stands so close." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then, just as suddenly, the weight vanished. The shadow folded back into the corner of the room like smoke sucked into a vent, its long body stretching unnaturally before snapping into nothing. I stumbled to my feet, shaking, drenched in cold sweat. I grabbed my keys, ready to flee the apartment, but when I opened the front door, the hallway lights flickered out. Darkness swallowed everything except a long silhouette stretching from my feet down the hallway floor. A silhouette that wasn't mine. I slammed the door and locked it. By evening, desperation drove me to seek help. I called my friend, Evan, who had a bad habit of believing every ghost story but a good habit of showing up when it mattered. He arrived with a flashlight, a crucifix he stole from his aunt, and a bag of salt like we were performing some kind of ritual. I almost laughed. Almost. We sat in the living room, lights fully on, every lamp blazing. Evan asked me to recount everything. I told him about the first night. The whisper. The mirror. The footprints. The couch. When I finished, he didn't mock me. He looked scared. "That thing," he said slowly, "it doesn't sound like a ghost. Ghosts don't cast shadows." He swallowed. Shadows belong to something physical. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. I asked what he meant. But before he could answer, every light in the apartment died at the same time. Click. 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 Darkness. The only illumination was Evan's flashing phone screen, and behind us, on the wall, stretching from ceiling to floor, was a towering, unmistakable silhouette. The shadow had returned. And this time, it wasn't standing behind me. It was standing directly behind Evan. Evan didn't notice it at first. He was too busy smacking his phone, trying to force the flashlight app to turn on, cursing under his breath. The hallway outside the apartment hummed oddly, the kind of low, electrical vibration a building makes before the lights flicker, but our lights were already gone. My breathing hitched as the shadow behind him stretched, elongating as if waking from a crouch, its height rising until its head nearly scraped the ceiling. Evan, I whispered, my voice trembling. Hold on, man, I think the power surge fried my... Evan. This time I didn't whisper. I forced the word out, strangled and sharp. He finally froze. The shadow tilted its head toward him in one slow, unnatural motion, as if studying the movement of a small animal. My chest tightened. Even in the dark, I could feel its attention shift, its curiosity sharpening. Don't move, I said. I didn't know if that was good advice. It just came out. Evan didn't breathe. I could hear the way his throat tightened. For a moment, none of us moved. The darkness felt alive. Then the shadow extended one arm, long, thin, with fingers tapering into sharp ends like wet branches, and lowered it toward Evan's shoulder. The faint rasp of its touch made my skin crawl. Evan flinched violently. That tiny movement was enough. The shadow's head snapped toward me instead, so fast I heard the crack of air. The shape blurred, as if vibrating, then reformed inches from my face. Evan screamed. I stumbled backward. The shadow didn't follow either of us. It only expanded. The room darkened further as its silhouette spread across the wall, swallowing light that wasn't even there. The air thickened, heavy and oppressive, like being underwater. Then I heard it. A second voice. Not a whisper this time. A layered, deep reverberation that sounded like multiple voices speaking at once, all from the shadow, all wrong. You let him stand too close. I didn't understand what it meant. But Evan did. He bolted for the door. Evan, don't! I shouted. He didn't listen. Panic made him reckless. He yanked the front door open, only for the entire hallway to be swallowed in pitch blackness, deeper than the dark inside my apartment. Not absence of light. Absence of space. Like someone had erased the hallway entirely. Evan froze at the threshold, staring into that impossible void. Something in it moved, a faint ripple, like fabric brushing past a doorway. He backed away. Slowly. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. What the hell is happening? He whispered. The shadow turned its head toward him again, and I saw it. Evan's silhouette on the floor changed shape. Stretched. Warped. The shadow wasn't copying him. It was replacing him. Piece by piece. Evan saw it too. Do you see that? Dude, it's literally, what is that? He stomped backward, kicking at his own shadow on the floor as if that would make a difference. It didn't. His shadow shivered, like something under the surface wanted to stand up. I pulled him away, dragging him toward the kitchen. My hands shook uncontrollably, but adrenaline overrode everything. We slammed the door shut and locked it. As if a simple wooden door could stop that thing. The kitchen lights flickered to life, one flicker, two, before buzzing out again. But in that brief glow, we both saw it. Our shadows on the tile floor didn't belong to our bodies anymore. Mine stood a little too straight. Evan's leaned a little too close. And both were growing taller. Evan pressed himself against the pantry door like it was a barricade instead of cheap hollow wood. His breathing was all over the place, too fast, too loud, the kind of panic panting that made every inhale feel like it might shatter into a sob. I wanted to tell him to calm down, but my own lungs weren't doing much better. The kitchen was dim, the only light coming from the faint glow of Evan's dying phone screen. It cast long, trembling shapes across the floor, shapes that didn't match our bodies. My shadow stood inches taller than me, its head slightly bowed as if listening for instructions. Evan's shadow curled subtly toward him, bent at an unnatural angle. Neither of them followed our movements exactly. They were lagging. Or thinking. "Dude," Evan whispered, pointing a trembling finger. "That one, yours, it moved before you did." "I know," I said. I didn't want to say it aloud. But I had seen it too. Behind us, something shifted in the apartment, the soft scrape of something dragging across the floor. Not heavy. Not metallic. More like a palm sliding gently over wood grain. I swallowed hard. It was moving again. The shadow didn't walk like a person. Not even like an animal. It drifted, its shape warping, thinning, stretching across surfaces like spilled ink. Every time we flicked our gaze toward it, it snapped back into a humanoid form. Not because that was its real shape, I realized, but because it wanted us to see it as one. Evan's phone flashlight flickered and began to dim. "Don't go out," he whispered at the screen. "Not now, not." The light died. And so did every sound. The apartment fell into a silence so absolute it felt pressurized, the kind of stillness that exists underwater or in caves a mile below Earth. My heartbeat echoed inside my skull. Then, a whisper. Close. Too close. It almost found me last time. The voice came from directly behind me. I spun. Nothing there. But the whisper hadn't been the shadows. It had been human. A realization crept over my spine like cold needles. That voice had been mine. My shadow slowly lifted its head from the floor. Its jaw unhinged just slightly, ink dripping down like black saliva, before closing again as though it had never moved. Evan grabbed me by the hoodie sleeve. "I'm not staying in here," he hissed. "We're running. Right now." I didn't have a better plan. We flung the pantry door open, bolted through the living room, and headed for the balcony's sliding doors. Night air seeped through the glass. The storm outside had gone silent, too silent. The sky looked wrong, like a void instead of darkness. Evan shoved the sliding door. Locked. He cursed under his breath, fumbling with the latch. That's when I noticed it. Our shadows weren't on the floor anymore. They were on the glass. On the outside. Looking in. I staggered backward. Evan froze, hands still on the lock. One of the silhouettes slowly lifted a hand, Evan's shadow, and placed a palm against the glass from the outside. Black fingerprints spread across the surface like mold. "Open it," a voice whispered outside. But the mouth that spoke did not belong to a human face. It belonged to the silhouette. Evan backed away so fast he tripped over my coffee table, sending books and remote controls flying. I grabbed him by the arm and pulled him to his feet. "We have to go. We have to go now." We sprinted for the front door. The hallway was back, real, physical, but dim and unnaturally long, stretching farther than the building's layout allowed, disappearing into a vanishing point of distant darkness. Behind us, the whispering grew louder. "Wrong shape. Too bright. Let us fit. Let us in." The voices came from everywhere. From the walls. From the floor. From our own shadows flaking off the surfaces and rejoining the dark mass behind us. We ran. The hallway pulsed with each step, lights flickering on in a sequence that chased us forward, then snapping off again the moment we passed. The building itself felt like it was breathing, each fluorescent bulb flicking on like an eye opening just long enough to notice us. Halfway down the corridor, Evan stopped dead. His shadow wasn't under him. It was ahead of him. Standing. Waiting. "Don't come closer," the silhouette said with Evan's voice, even though Evan hadn't opened his mouth. It tilted its head with that same slow, wet motion curiosity the original shadow had shown. Then it stepped toward him. "Move!" I shouted, shoving Evan aside as the silhouette lunged. It hit the wall with a sound like a collapsing tarp and reformed instantly, reshaping itself into a near-perfect copy of Evan again. It didn't attack. It simply stood between us and the stairwell door. More shadows slithered out of the corners, unfolding from the ceiling, peeling away from doorframes, rising from the uneven lighting like they'd been there the entire time, waiting for our eyes to adjust. A soft, low rumble vibrated through the walls. Then the original shadow, taller, darker, denser, formed at the far end of the hallway. And it spoke. You don't understand. Its voice wasn't layered now. It was singular. Focused. Speaking directly to me. Evan gripped my arm hard enough to bruise. Don't answer it, he whispered. I didn't want to. But the shadow stepped closer, each movement sending ripples through the other silhouettes like a tide responding to a moon. It leaned its head down toward us. You were supposed to stay alone. My throat tightened. What does that mean? Evan elbowed me. Dude, shut up. But it was too late. The shadow's shape split, like a slit opening down its chest, and something inside glowed faintly. Not light. Not fire. Something like a horizon line. A boundary. Behind that threshold, countless shapes writhed, hundreds, maybe thousands, limbs bending and unbending in slow, deliberate motions. Faces without features pressed against the surface from the other side. All shadows. All waiting. Once one follows you, it said, others learn the path. The slit closed. Evan nearly fainted. That was when the fire alarm went off. A shrill, building-wide screech that shattered the oppressive silence. Red strobe lights flashed along the ceiling, casting jagged shapes across the walls. The shadows recoiled. Not dramatically, just a tight, twitching flinch, like animals exposed to sudden daylight. It was enough. I grabbed Evan, yanked him past the partial gap between the silhouettes, and sprinted full speed to the stairwell. He stumbled, but adrenaline carried him through the door with me. We ran down all 6 flights. We ran until we burst into the parking lot, collapsing beside my car as the storm finally broke, real lightning, real thunder, real rain slamming down like the